In engineering physics, we are discussing atomic structure. In that journey, in the last session, we looked at emission and absorption spectra of photons in atomic levels. Now we shall try to understand representation of Bohr's theory in a mathematical form. If you remember the postulates of Bohr's atomic theory, one of the postulates talks about, in fact the first postulate, the quantization of angular momentum. So how do we get that? For that, consider the nucleus, atom, where the nucleus is here, completely positively charged at this location. And this is the atomic radius r. If an electron is rotating in an orbit around the nucleus, at any instant, the mass of an electron is m, charge of an electron is minus, negative. So at any instant, the velocity can be resolved like this. So along the tangent, the velocity can be resolved. With this consideration, let us try to express the postulate of Bohr's theory in mathematical form. Now the classical mechanics shows that the linear momentum of an electron can be expressed in angular momentum. Even linear momentum can also be expressed as angular momentum also, like P equal to mv into the distance covered, which is nothing but the circumference, 2 pi r. Therefore, it will be mv into 2 pi r. For a circular orbit, Bohr assumed that it is to be quantized. That is, it can only have an integer multiple of h. That means n value will be changing. For each of these one complete revolution, so h value will be used, energy in terms of Planck's constant. So 1 into h, 2 into h, 3 into h, like that. So that is what we studied as integral multiple. So for a circular orbit, Bohr assumed it to be quantized. That is, Bohr thought that momentum can be quantized such that it can only take integer multiple values. That is, integer multiple values of the Planck constant. So therefore, this 2 pi r mv must be equal to nh, where n value will be 1, 2, 3, 4. Up to infinity it can travel. So energy of an electron in such a case can be written as E. That is, EPE is nothing but the potential energy of electron, which is mainly due to the electrostatic force between the nucleus. Of course, in the case of hydrogen atom, it is proton, and the electron in the orbit. So EPE is the potential energy of electron, which is mainly due to the electrostatic force of attraction between the nucleus and the electron in the orbit. This component tends to 0 if the electron is removed away from the electrostatic range of the nucleus. That is, if the atom is ionized. So we can express, when it is moving, it becomes kinetic energy. So this particular potential energy component we can express in integral form as, this minus shows it is a force of attraction. The limits are tending from r to infinity. Now here, Ze square by r square, how it has got? Try to recollect the Coulombsian law. Force of attraction or repulsion is directly proportional to the product of their charges and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. That is the Coulomb's law. So one mass is Ze, another mass is, another charge is E. So electron charge is E. Central nucleus proton charge in the case of hydrogen, it is Ze. So Ze into E is Ze square. That is directly proportional. Inversely proportional to the square of the distance. That is 1 by r square. Together it will be Ze square by r square. So with respect to, in terms of r, if you integrate it, then the expression will be minus integral r to 8 Ze square r square by dr. Of course, when you integrate this, integral dr will be r. So that r will, one r will get off from the denominator. So you will have Ze square by r. This is the potential energy of the electron. That is the electrostatic force between the nucleus and the revolving electron in the orbit. To get this idea, you can have a hint of Coulomb's law here. Now the kinetic energy component we need to understand. This is about the potential energy component. Now when you take kinetic energy of the component, that is EKE, what we wrote earlier, the kinetic energy component is basically due to the motion of electron with a velocity v, and therefore kinetic energy can be represented as half mv square. So this is potential energy, this is the kinetic energy. So once we express kinetic energy, total energy can be expressed. Therefore these two are equal. From equation 1, EPE is equal to EKE. Therefore total energy E can be represented as minus ZE square by R must be equal to half mv square. Minus ZE square by R equal to half mv square. So therefore when you equate for a stationary orbit, when it is rotating in a circular orbit, when you talk about stationary orbit, the centripetal force must be balanced. When it is rotating, we know that there is some centripetal force existing. So therefore for a stationary orbit, the centripetal force must be balanced by the electrostatic force of attraction. That means this ZE square by R or ZE square by R square, this force must be equal to centripetal force mv square by R. So that is what we have equated here. So that's how we will get mv square equal to ZE square by R from this equation. Okay. Now let it be equation 6. Now from equation 5, this ZE square by R minus ZE square by R equal to E. Therefore ZE square by R equal to minus E. Okay. And from equation 6, we got mv square equal to ZE square by R. Therefore from that you can say E equal to minus mv square. Or mv square equal to minus E, or E equal to minus mv square. And again from equation 5 you see E is equal to half mv square. So if you substitute E equal to half mv square here, so this minus mv square will be equal to half mv square. That is minus half mv square. So from these equations, what we can obtain is velocity of the revolving electron as 2 pi ZE square by NH. Let it be equation 7. Now let us substitute the value of V in E is equal to minus half mv square. So by substituting in this expression, we will get like this. E is equal to minus half mv square, that is minus half m into, for V square you can substitute 2 pi ZE square by NH whole square. So when you expand, this 2 will become 4, and in that 4 denominator 2 will go. So therefore you have 2 pi square Z square E square whole square e power 4 into m by n square h square. This is the simplified expression for energy. Let it be equation 8. Now with the help of Einstein as well as Planck's relation, we have an expression for energy of subatomic particle in the case as E equal to h nu. Now when it is changing from between two orbits, then you can take the orbits as n dash and n, then h nu is equal to E1 minus E2 or E2 minus E1. That is nothing but here n values are, one is n dash and another is n. Therefore you can write E value as En dash minus En. So you can write as, therefore E equal to h nu equal to En dash minus En. Now that you can substitute for E value here in the equation 8. So in the equation 8 for E value you can write this value. That is h nu is equal to, you can write. So that is what we are writing. H nu, that is for E, which is nothing but En dash minus En, can be written as this value. So 2 pi square. You can send this minus inside. Therefore, it will become 1 by n minus 1 by n1. So therefore, you can write minus as it is and substitute. So this will become 2 pi square Z square e power 4 by m into h square for 1 by n square you can write as 1 by n square minus 1 by n dash square by sending the minus inside. If you take out the minus outside, that will become 1 by n dash square minus 1 by n square. So this expression you can write like this. Got the point? Now here when you are writing nu is the frequency. Frequency is generally associated with an oscillating point, oscillating particle. Electron is rotating here. Therefore, it can have a radiation in the form of a light wave. So therefore, it will have wave nature. In that sense, you can represent velocity in terms of light velocity. Therefore, being a wave, it will have a wavelength. So substituting nu value in terms of wavelength as c by lambda, you can express h nu as hc by lambda equal to 2 pi square z square e power 4 by h square into 1 by n square minus 1 by n dash square. Now from this you can calculate 1 by lambda. So keep 1 by lambda here on the left side and send the rest to the other side. Then it will become automatically by cross multiplying 2 pi square z square e power 4 m divided by c into h will come here h cube into 1 by n dash square minus 1 by n square. Okay. Now if you observe this equation, you can put this rest of the thing into constant. So on the right hand side, if you take the term, first term, put the entire first term like this. 2 pi square z square e power 4 by m divided by ch cube into a constant r. Then this expression can be written as 1 by lambda is equal to r into 1 by n dash square minus 1 by n square. Got it? This is nothing but the Rydberg constant. This is nothing but Rydberg constant. This is what we can express, obtain the expression for Rydberg constant from the Bohr's postulate. Now here, in the case of hydrogen atom, for example, atomic number equal to 1 for Z equal to 1. Now when you say Z equal to 1 and when you know all other remaining values here in this expression, then the value of R can be calculated. Value of R can be computed. This comes out to be practically, when substituted and simplified, practically it was found to be 1.00099 into 10 power 7 per meter. Now this almost collates experimentally determined value. Experimental value is found to be 1.097 into 10 power minus 7. 10 power 7, not 10 power minus 7. 10 power 7 per meter. So this is from Balmer formula it was found. From theoretical values, when you substitute for hydrogen atom, you are getting like this. That means the theoretical value almost collates with the experimental determined value from Balmer formula. So when applied to hydrogen spectra, therefore it was assumed that this approach of Bohr for obtaining the Rydberg constant is widely accepted. Now using Bohr's approach, we can also calculate the size of an atom. Let us see how. Now while solving the Rydberg constant expression, we got an equation ZE square by R square equal to mv square by R. Potential energy and kinetic energy equation. Now from there we can get an expression for R. So when you equate this equation, from this equation by cross multiplying, you will get R is equal to ZE square by mv square. Okay. Now you can simplify ZE square by mv square into ZE square by m into 1 by v square. We got an expression. So value of v is found to be 2 pi ZE square by nh. So substituting the value of v as 2 pi ZE square by nh in this expression, you can write R as nth orbit you can calculate. ZE square by mv square equal to ZE square by m into 1 by v square. V square is equal to 2 pi ZE square by nh whole square. So when you say 1 by v square, it will become nh, the converse. nh by 2 pi ZE square whole square. So when you expand this and simplify, you will understand that except R and N in this formula, Z is constant for that atom, E is always constant, M is constant, H is constant, 2 pi is constant. All other things are constants. So what do you indicate from this? That for all other points are constants here, variables are constants here, except R and N. So therefore you can say this is n square na. So R is proportional to n square. If you expand this, let us see what will happen. If you expand this, then what you are getting? You are getting as n square h square by 4 pi square m z e square. When you expand this. Now here except n square, rest all are all constant. H is a constant, Z is a constant, E is a constant. So therefore from this we can indicate that R is proportional to n square. Got it or not? R is proportional to n square. For example, if you put n equal to 1, that is first orbit, that is of a hydrogen atom, then Z equal to 1. So for hydrogen atom, when you put n equal to 1 being the first orbit with Z equal to 1, then the radius of the orbit can be calculated. Now the radius of the hydrogen atom is found to be, by substituting these values inside, standard values for n equal to 1 and Z equal to 1 and H being the Planck constant, E being the charge of an electron, radius of the orbit is found to be, in the case of hydrogen atom, as 0.528 into 10 power minus 8 centimeters. So of course you can convert in terms of angstrom units as 0.528 angstrom. This is the radius of the orbit. This is how we can calculate radius of the orbit. And of course from this also we can calculate the time period of an electron in orbit. Let us see how. So using the standard relation T equal to 2 pi Rn by Vn, the time period of an electron in Bohr's orbit can be calculated by substituting the values of orbit. N is the orbit number, V is the velocity, and R is the distance, radius. Standard values you can substitute, and from there we can find the time period of an electron in the Bohr's orbit. Now we can also get something related what is known as fine structure constant from this. What is this fine structure constant? Now in the earlier equations, we got velocity as something like this. V equal to 2 pi ZE square by NH. Now we can write this equation as, now this is the velocity of electron in the nth orbit. Velocity of electron in the nth orbit. Now this formula V equal to 2 pi ZE square by NH, you can write it like this. I am just by multiplying C by C. With C by C, I am writing like this. So I will multiply the right hand side and divide the right hand side by C. In terms of radiation, velocity of light I am bringing into the picture. Therefore, this will become 2 pi ZE square by CH into C by N. So when you strike off C, it will become NH only. Now, for convenience sake, I have rewritten like this. Now, this, once we write like this, now let us term this 2 pi ZE square by CH as alpha. So you can call this here, because Z, E, pi, these are all constant values. So when you put 2 pi ZE square by CH as alpha, you can write V as what? Alpha C by NH. Alpha C by NH. Here in this equation, 2 pi E square by CH, what we are writing as alpha. In this, except Z, 2 pi E square by CH is found to be 1 by 137. This is what is called fine structure constant. So using this fine structure constant, Bohr's radius can also be written like this. This is how you can write the Bohr's radius. That is, in terms of alpha, Bohr's radius can be written as A naught is equal to h cut upon by alpha mc. Now, of course, h cut is nothing but h upon 2 pi. When this is simplified, it was practically calculated as 5.28 into 10 power minus 11 centimeters, where h cut is nothing but h upon 2 pi. And of course, we also can calculate the binding energy. This is how binding energy can be calculated. Binding energy standard formula E equal to minus U by 2. That is minus alpha into Hc by 2A naught. So when you substitute the values, you will get the value as minus 13.58 electron volts. So the binding energy of an electron with proton is therefore directly. So if you eliminate this equation, then automatically you will have alpha square coming into picture. So therefore binding energy of an electron with proton is therefore directly proportional to the mc square by 2, that is the rest of the energy. That's how we can conclude binding energy statement. So the binding energy of an electron with the proton is therefore directly proportional to the electron rest energy. mc square by 2 is nothing but the electron rest energy. Now let us understand the extension of Bohr's model of atom to other different atoms. Based on hydrogen atom explanation, let us try to understand how we can extend Bohr's model to other atoms. Even though Bohr's model is specifically applicable to hydrogen atoms, it can be successfully used to explain the spectra of hydrogen-like atoms. Hydrogen-like atoms means that is the atoms with single electron in the orbit, but with z number of protons in the nucleus. Though it is applicable, I am recapping, though Bohr's model is specifically applicable to hydrogen atoms, this model can be successfully used to explain the spectra of hydrogen-like atoms. When we say hydrogen-like atoms, that means the atoms with single electron in the orbit, but with z number of protons in the nucleus. Such a condition is satisfied only when you ionize. Say for example, it is satisfied by ionized helium. Ionized helium will have Z equal to 2 and doubly ionized lithium where Z equal to 3 and some other elements ionized in a similar way such that only one electron is left. So the observed spectra of such ionized atoms approximately match with theoretically calculated wavelength using the earlier expression what we have seen as 1 by lambda equal to 2 pi square z square e power 4 m by ch cube into 1 by n dash square minus 1 by n square. But the problem is the failure to explain this, it cannot explain the heavier atoms, only lighter atoms we are talking about. So the failure to explain the spectra of heavier atoms is because due to complexity of Coulomb interactions between electrons and protons. So with that background, let us understand the limitations of Bohr model of an atom. Well, if you carefully observe, Bohr's model of an atom, in fact, is combining. It's combined Bohr's postulates with Rutherford's nuclear model. Though it has explained the hydrogen atom, despite explaining the spectral lines of hydrogen atom, Bohr's model has got certain drawbacks like what we have listed here. This model cannot explain the spectra of heavier elements. And highly resolved spectra of hydrogen and hydrogen-like atoms show a very fine structure, what we call a subgroup of spectral lines. That cannot be explained by Bohr's model. And one more thing, we heard something called Zeeman effect. In the presence of strong magnetic field, the spectral lines of atoms show their fine structure, what is known as Zeeman effect. This cannot be explained by Bohr's model. And importantly, Bohr's model presumes electrons to be particles revolving in stationary circular orbits. This is very much contrary to the de Broglie's dual nature of electron. This is very important, crucial point to be remembered as a drawback. I am recapping this fourth point. Bohr's model presumes that electrons to be particles revolving in stationary circular orbits, but is exactly very much contrary to the de Broglie's dual nature of electrons. And moreover, Further, we can say that Heisenberg uncertainty principle is there. It raises so many questions on simultaneous measurement of both position and momentum or velocity. So in that context, there is no way that well-defined stationary circular orbits can exist. Bohr assumed that stationary orbits can exist. But that's not possible because if you observe the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, that led so many questions to be raised. It talks about simultaneous measurement of position, momentum or velocity, any two parameters. Accordingly, well-defined stationary circular orbits cannot exist. But in Bohr's model, it assumed that stationary orbit exists. Because of these reasons, Bohr's model combines both the particle and the wave nature of electrons. And of course, this concept was further elaborated by great personalities like de Broglie, Heisenberg, Pauli, Schrödinger, Sommerfeld. So these guys have further elaborated the concept. So the result of combining, you can say, detailed mathematical formulation from the above theories led to the concept of what is known as quantum numbers and quantum mechanics. I'm just concluding this. We have already seen the drawbacks of Bohr's model of atoms, certain drawbacks, especially stationary orbit. Because of all these drawback reasons, Bohr's model combines dual nature, both the particle as well as wave nature of electrons, which was further elaborated by theories proposed by de Broglie, Heisenberg, Pauli, Schrödinger and Sommerfeld, etc. So therefore, the result of combining detailed mathematical formulation from the theories of all these great personalities finally led to the concept of what is known as quantum numbers and quantum mechanics. So if we summarize today's session, in this session we tried to understand the process of obtaining expression for Rydberg constant based on Bohr's postulate. And from there we try to understand how to calculate the size of an atom or the radius of an atom, and also find out the time period of an electron in Bohr's orbit, followed by understanding something what is known as fine structure constant. And we tried to extend the idea of Bohr model of atom to other atoms, and then we looked at basic limitations of Bohr's model of atom, which led to the concept of quantum numbers and quantum mechanics, which were adopted by various scientists later on to further carry out the research in the atomic structure. That we shall take it up in the next session.